He's Derek.
I am always a minute away from becoming an after-school special.
She's Romaine.
Like, really, bitch? Really? Really? Come on. That's bullshit.
This is Derek and Romaine.
2.0, bitches. Really, bitch? Really? Hi, Derek.
Hello, Romaine. So glad to have everybody back with us. Thanks for subscribing to Derek and Romaine. I mean, what's better than that? Nothing. You really get your money's worth around here. Coming up in a few minutes, we are going to be joined by podcaster, film reviewer, longtime friend of Derek Hartley, and now, after all these years, longtime friend of Romaine Patterson.
That's right.
Because Alonso Duralde, he has a new book, Hollywood Pride, which covers quite extensively the history of LGBTQ people in front of and behind the camera, gay characters, gay, I'm using as an umbrella term, queer, we'll use that as our umbrella term, queer creators behind the scenes as well, writers, directors, costume designers, influential
people who make
behind.
the magic happen.
Yeah. But also a lot of sort of on-screen people, and then a few people who are straight identified, but are much beloved by the LGBTQ community. And it is quite comprehensive, although not everything is in it. Even as comprehensive as it is, there are, it just goes to show there's a deep well of possibilities in there. And some things that are not included in the book. I mean, for me, the biggest surprise omission that we don't talk about is Louise Brooks, who
yes.
was a fairly minor silent film actor, a contract player at Paramount, who made quite an indelible impression on film lovers, and it has been a gay icon. Ever since she was on film 100 years ago. She made her film debut in 1925, I want to say, so almost 100 years ago. But she is one of the few gay icons that is both a gay and lesbian icon. Lesbians are also obsessed with Louise Brooks, and were like from the get-go. And so it is interesting that she was not included in the book, although one of the movies that she's in, Pandora's Box, because it's a silent film from 1929 made by G.W. Pabst, and it's one of her most iconic roles. But in it, there is a lesbian character. And so Alonso does include the movie, but he doesn't break her out separately as like a gay icon. But I love Louise Brooks, and I'm not alone. I've been obsessed with her since I read Barry Paris's biography, which was a gift to me by my friend Elena Gonzalez for my birthday a long, long time ago. And Louise Brooks is just, I don't know, she's, it's funny, one of her friends, because at the time she was rumored to be a lesbian, and she did actually have sex with a woman here or there, although she was pretty straight. But the ladies were always trying to get in her business. And she had a signature bob haircut that was what she's most known for. And then she had been a dancer. She had been she had been in the Denishon dance troupe, and sort of was like a Martha Graham, sort of in that era of interpretive dancers. And but then of course she went to Broadway and was like a specialty dancer on Broadway. And but so I think people really responded to her because she had kind of like a sleek dancer body and her no nonsense hairdo. It was really appealing to lesbians, I think.
Well, lesbians do like a no nonsense hairdo, Derek. Myself included. No nonsense is my style.
By the way, I just got an urgent text message from Matt Kugelman the director of Hurricane Bianca and Hurricane Bianca 2 for Rush with Hate.
Oh.
And that was what that ding was in the background. I don't think he knew that we were recording this now, but he said, importantly, both Hurricane Bianca movies are available on Amazon Prime. So if you haven't seen them, watch on Amazon Prime. They're also available on Kanopy. So you can watch that. And Alonso Duralde does talk about Kanopy because he has a Kanopy podcast for people who haven't seen it. But Romaine, you would have liked Louise Brooks. She had like a sexy.
I don't know that I
her.
have ever seen a Louise Brooks
Like a picture
movie.
or anything?
Yeah. I don't even think I've seen a picture of her. Yeah.
You wouldn't have seen any of her movies because she really only made silent movies. I think she made 3 sound films. The most notable of them is the last of the crappy B movies that John Wayne made before he became a star in Stagecoach in 1939.
She is
made
pretty.
a truly terrible movie with him called The Overland Stage Raiders, which was about, oh my God, cowboys who thwart a smuggling ring that uses planes. It was kind of a weird sort of transition thing of a Western that's set in modern times. Oh, it's just terrible. It's really bad. But John Wayne is young and hot and strapping in it and whatever. But it's sort of the end of her Hollywood career and the beginning of his. Is the only thing that's notable about it. I believe I have it on VHS around here somewhere. It's probably, you can watch it on YouTube. It's not good. I'm just going to tell you. But if anyone ever does get curious about watching a Louise Brooks movie, the most iconic is the Pandora's Box, which is based on a Wiedekind, Franz Wiedekind story. And the Spring Awakening, I believe, was also based on something that he wrote. If I could bring it into a modern era that Romaine will understand.
Sure.
But Pandora's Box is basically about a young woman who haplessly, really, just destroys the lives of everyone who is in love with her.
Oh.
And it is a string of men and women who are sexually obsessed with her and destroy themselves trying to be with her. And that's what the movie is about. And
now, Pandora's Box came out in 1929, Derek.
Yeah.
So how is it that all this women in love with her was acceptable back then?
Well, it wasn't really acceptable per se, but in the Hollywood Pride book that Alonso talks about, and then in the movie The Celluloid Closet and the Vito Russo book that we also talk about in there, because Vito Russo was really the first film scholar to really talk about gay characters in movies, not so much gay actors, but really sort of the gay characters and sort of stereotypes and everything. And there was a period in Hollywood where there were no censors, there were no rules about what you could put in movies, but sometimes there would be local organizations like the Catholic Legion of Decency that would say, thumbs up or thumbs down a movie and that kind of thing, that would prevent it from being shown. And there were definitely racist theater owners and exhibitors that would not show movies that, for instance, had black people in them, or they would just cut any scenes that black characters were in out of the movies. So there was a certain amount of other local censorship that was going on, but there wasn't a centralized censorship until 1934 when the Hays Code. Will Hays had been the postmaster general, and Hollywood basically hired him to be the gatekeeper to prevent Congress from passing laws that would legally censor movies or to keep these movies from being edited locally. That would prevent that. So, but once the Hays Code came in, you couldn't have any scenes of overt sexuality. You couldn't have any scenes of homosexuality. You couldn't talk about abortion. There were all sorts of things that suddenly became very taboo. But what happened is that the filmmakers started basically working around the code.
Okay.
By not explicitly saying that things were gay, but then they would sort of casually show things to be gay in a way that if the audience knew what was happening, would understand what was happening, but they weren't overtly expressing it.
Gotcha.
And that's how they got around it. But like in Pandora's Box, the lesbian is just kind of wearing mannish suits. This was a lot of what they would do. You know, a woman would be in kind of a mannish suit, and she would stare longingly at a woman, and like, that was it. That was all you could get. And in Pandora's Box, she danced with Louise Brooks, like they tango on the dance floor, kind of a thing, because she's trying to get into her pants. But the woman who played the role did not want to play a lesbian. So the director basically had to sort of trick her into making it, you know, having her play this sort of lesbian character that she did not want to play. But she was like the wife of the producer or something. So they kind of didn't have, you know, she got cast in it because she knew a guy, but she wasn't like a great actress or anything. And then she played this lesbian role. Like Lorraine Gary in Jaws. Roy Scheider's wife in Jaws in the movie, Lorraine Gary, was actually the wife of the head of production at Universal, which released the movie, which is kind of how she got cast in the role.
Oh.
You know, it's helpful to know people.
Okay.
Kind of like Julie Chen Moonves being married to the head of CBS and becoming the host of Big Brother.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice gig if you can get it.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
So let me, Romaine will never watch Pandora's Box because it is a silent movie and black and white.
Not going to do that, yeah.
Yeah. It's tough going there.
Right.
But here I will make some suggestions of movies.
Okay.
One of which we actually talk about with Alonso in more detail that after our conversation, because we've already recorded it, spoiler alert.
Right.
I rewatched because I was curious about it, and now I have thoughts about it.
Okay.
So I will go in sort of date chronological order, and then we'll see if anything about this movie entices Romaine to want to watch it.
Okay.
But I know that sometimes people who haven't seen a lot of classic movies are kind of looking for recommendations of things that are like actually good that a modern audience might actually enjoy.
Right.
So I try to focus on that. So the first movie is one of my favorite all-time, definitely a top 10 movie for me, is a movie called Midnight with Claudette Colbert.
Okay.
And it is a very light romantic comedy about an American woman who arrives in Paris on a rainy night at midnight with nothing but the evening gown on her back.
Oh.
And no money in her purse.
Let me tell you, that's often how I travel, Derek. I
Yes.
travel in an evening gown and nothing else.
Well, she was coming from Monte Carlo, where she lost all of her money on the gambling tables.
Oh, well, that can happen.
And had to, like, leave her suitcase in hock. So she only has, like, a collection ticket for her suitcase in her purse. And basically comes to Paris to try to get a job as a nightclub singer and then, like, pay her way. So she gets in a taxi, and the cab driver, of course, has the hots for her and tries to, like, get him to drive her around to nightclubs to try to get her a job as a singer. And then they'll split the money. She'll pay him back. But he really just wants to fuck her.
Oh.
So she jumps out of the cab and runs into, like, a fancy party.
Okay.
And then hands her hawk ticket off as her ticket to the party, because they're not, like, looking closely at the tickets.
Right.
Just hands it off and walks in with everyone because she's in an evening gown. And it's a whole series of events where she, the jig is up. They know somebody has passed off this pawn ticket as their ticket, and they're trying to find her. And then a gay guy, like, scoops her out of the room because she looks fun into a game of bridge. And while she's there, she's playing bridge with a society woman played by Mary Astor, one of my all-time favorite actresses of this time period, and a younger guy Frances Lederer, who is also in the Louise Brooks movie, Pandora's Box. And he's like a young gigolo who is romancing Mary Astor, but Mary Astor is married to John Barrymore. And so John Barrymore basically, unbeknownst to her, sets her up as a baroness and like gives her a fancy suite at a hotel and everything because the gigolo just wants a wealthy woman, and he obviously has the hots for Claudette Colbert. So John Barrymore figures that if he tricks the gigolo into falling in love with Claudette Colbert, maybe he can get his own wife back.
Okay.
And that's the plot of the movie. And then later on, the cab driver finally tracks her down, passes himself off as the Baron, and then they have to try to convince everyone that the Baron is insane. It's a whole cascading series of events. They're all ludicrous and ridiculous, but it's really fun. The movie is written by Billy Wilder, who went on to do one of Romaine's favorite movies, Sunset Boulevard, along with Some Like It Hot and The Apartment, like a Double Indemnity, a string of great movies. But this was one of his early works as a writer. The movie is just really fun. The gay character is obviously like the gay best friend of the wealthy lady, played by Mary Astor. And they kind of don't acknowledge that he's gay, but he is obviously really gay. And at one point, she has like her terrible story of tragedy to tell everyone. And he's like, "Oh, no, that's so terrible. Please go on. No, oh, that's awful. Please tell us more." Yeah, it's great. So the movie is a lot of fun. It has a lot of laughs, and I love it. And it is light and frothy and genuinely fun and has a gay character in it. And watching it, you'll be able to understand, like, oh, you know, audiences of the time would have recognized this as a gay character. And it gives you just like another level to enjoy the movie in.
Okay.
And you might like it. Claudette Colbert is kind of hot. And she's not really your type, but she's not hard on the eyes. And Donna Michi plays the cab driver, the Hungarian cab driver, Tibor Czerny. And it's fun. So you might that one you might actually enjoy because it is actually genuinely funny and fun.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Is it in black and white?
It is, in fact, in black and white.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I know I'm really difficult, and I'm sure there are a lot of great movies, but like, how am I going to relate to this movie? Let's start with that, because I feel like if I'm going to have to watch an old movie, I want to relate to it in some way.
Well, haven't you ever watched another romantic comedy? And how are you supposed to relate to When Harry Met Sally or Sleepless in Seattle?
I hate both those movies.
Well, you're not really a romantic comedy kind of a person.
I'm really not. I find them cheesy and stupid and just not my cup of tea.
Well, I mean, it is cheesy and stupid. I mean, it's a ridiculous premise, but you kind of go with it. It's fun and it's Paris.
Yeah.
And it mostly, like all romantic comedies, it's about a series of deceptions and getting yourself out from under your many, many lies. And it is a movie where the comedy comes from the mounting number of lies that all the characters are telling.
Right.
And then, you know, can this house of cards of lies stay standing, or will it all fall apart? So that's the fun. All right. Well, one that is maybe more your liking, although it's still in black and white, and it does have Mary Astor in it, and she is great in the movie, is The Maltese Falcon.
The Maltese Falcon. Okay.
Yes.
What's it about?
It is the stuff that dreams are made of. So it is about a detective in San Francisco.
Okay.
Who gets hired to try to find an elusive statue, the Maltese Falcon, that is a long storied statue that is solid gold. A solid gold statue that has been around for hundreds of years, but has disappeared and has been rumored around the world to be in various places. And it has been painted black to hide the fact that it is made of solid gold.
Okay.
And the rumor is that the Maltese Falcon has arrived in San Francisco. and there is a merry band of various criminals who are trying to either get it
Okay.
or steal it.
Well, yeah, if it's made of solid gold, who wouldn't want to steal that?
Right. But people are trying to buy it, and then, other people are trying to steal it or, buy it out from under the other buyers.
Right.
And so Mary Astor is sort of is one of the people who is trying to get the Maltese Falcon. Humphrey Bogart is the detective.
Okay.
And this is like a big star-making movie for him. It's also one of the star-making movies for John Huston as a director, Angelica Huston's father. And it has a great script and a great story. But Mary Astor is among the various people who are trying to get the Maltese Falcon. And everyone else who's trying to get it is a homosexual. So Peter Lorre plays an obviously gay character, Sidney Greenstreet, a.k.a. the Fat Man. Mm-hmm. He also is playing a pretty obviously gay character. He has like a young boy toy who is his like protector, who is also like a trade. He's gay, or maybe he's just a rent boy kind of a thing, like gay for pay kind of a like heavy that works for the Fat Man. Anyway, they're just gay characters all over this movie, but they don't explicitly say that they're gay. But it basically is a gay cabal of characters who are trying to get the Maltese Falcon, and Mary Astor as essentially the only heterosexual character who is also trying to get it. And it is really fun because it's a thriller, because there's a murder and you don't know who committed the murder. You don't know who will end up with the Maltese Falcon and who won't. Who's gonna get the solid gold prize,
right?
And who will dupe whom. There's a lot of like crisscrossing and double crossing, and there's a real question of if Humphrey Bogart's character is like a good guy or a bad guy. Like, will he try to steal the Maltese Falcon for himself? It's good. And I think you would enjoy it because there are some laughs. And again,
it does sound fun.
Yeah. And you will also, in watching it with modern eyes, you'll be like, all of these other characters are clearly gay.
Okay, that one sounds all right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I think you would enjoy that one.
It's probably black and white, but it does sound fun.
Yes. It's short.
How can you tell that the statue's made of gold if it's all black and white?
Well, it's painted gold to mask what is underneath it. But at one point in the movie, the Maltese Falcon does appear, and they scrape the side of it, like to scrape the paint off.
Yeah.
To see underneath,
right,
if it is the real Maltese Falcon. So that obviously, the gold underneath it will show even in a black and white movie.
Okay.
So strong recommend for the Maltese Falcon, especially if you're not like a romantic comedy kind of a person.
Which I'm not.
You like more of like a thriller. Maltese Falcon has some good laughs, some good twists, and surprises, and you'll probably enjoy it. It's one of the like AFI top 100 movies of all time. Like it's it's a great movie. It's fun, and it's not very long. Okay. So Gilda is a movie that we talked to Alonso Duralde about. And this one, Rita Hayworth is ostensibly the star of the movie. And I think that you would enjoy it only from the standpoint of Rita Hayworth is a hot fucking dish in this movie.
Oh, okay.
Now, she had been a dancer.
Yeah.
And previously they had tried to have her in quote unquote ethnic roles when she had brown hair. And they dyed her hair red. And then she became like this colossal, like the #1 box office star at Columbia Pictures. And in the movie, she plays a like trade, where she's just like a woman who sleeps with men for money.
Okay.
Right, a gold digger, gigolo. So apparently the backstory of the movie is supposed to be that she and Glenn Ford who plays Johnny. They previously were both hustlers who fell in love, but obviously both of them are hustlers, so they need to be with somebody who has money.
Right, because a hustler's got to be out there hustling.
Yes.
The whole point is to get some money.
Yeah, so they have broken up because they're both hustlers who need money. Now, in the beginning of the movie, Gilda comes in like a half an hour into the movie, 20 minutes into the movie. But at the beginning of the movie, Johnny meets Balin, who is a wealthy, criminal guy who runs a casino.
Okay.
And it's pretty clear at the beginning of the movie that Johnny and Balin are going to hook up.
Oh. Okay.
That Balin is gay.
Yeah.
Which you can tell by how well-dressed he is. He also has a very phallic cane that has a knife that automatically juts out of the end of it.
Oh. Does he have gay face?
Yeah. That he calls, that's my friend.
Oh. His friend.
I always keep my friend. And he holds the cane in front of himself like a penis.
Of course he does.
And Glenn Ford is instantly smitten and is ready to be whatever Balin wants him to be.
Oh.
So it's pretty clear at the beginning that it is like a sort of bisexual or gay for pay trade kind of a situation here.
Okay.
With Glenn Ford and, the guy playing Balin, Johnny and Balin. And then later on, Balin marries Gilda. And this creates the sort of awkward love triangle, which is ostensibly supposed to be that Johnny is jealous of Balin because he has married the woman that he loves. But the reality, when you watch the movie, is no, they're both hustlers and they're trying to hustle the same guy. And why he hates Gilda is because she's cutting in on his territory.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So what you would like about the movie is that Rita Hayworth is hot.
Well, I do like hot chicks.
She wears strapless dresses where only the will of God is keeping her boobs from popping out. I mean, it is unbelievable that her breasts do not pop out of this dress because she is just dancing around in this strapless dress. And she has big naturals, and she is shaking it like she got nothing to lose.
I see.
Yeah.
Well,
so you'd enjoy that. And she has big, gorgeous curly mane of hair. And she just tosses it all over the place.
I see.
In as sexy a manner as possible.
Yeah.
And then she has sexy one-liners all the time through the movie that are hilarious. The best is her entrance into the movie, which is the most iconic of all time, because they walk into her bedroom and Balin says, "Gilda, are you decent?" And the shot is just in the room, and suddenly her hair flings up into the shot, and you can't see that she's wearing any clothing because she's wearing something strapless, right?
Okay.
And so she just flings up into the shot, looking probably naked, and goes, "Who, me?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty clear she's not decent at all.
I see. That sounds horrible.
Yes. So we talk a bit more about that movie. But you would enjoy Rita Hayworth's performance in the movie. And it's a little bit of like a Casablanca ripoff. And there are some sort of underworld criminal plot twists and turns that are going on in the movie. But it's really just a vehicle for Rita Hayworth to look gorgeous, say sassy things. She has like a gorgeous deep voice. Like you would be into her because she is tall. She has like a sultry, deep tone to her voice.
Right.
She's got big naturals, but you would not be completely smothered by them. And she's and it's a former dancer. She just has a very like sexy physicality to her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you'd be into Rita Hayworth.
Okay.
In Gilda.
Also black and white?
Also black and white. Yeah. Sorry.
It's all right. I can enjoy a beautiful woman in black and white, I guess. But I mean,
and then the last one that I watched was actually really good is The Third Man, which is, again, not in Alonso's book, but does have, because I was watching it recently, and it's a movie that stars Joseph Cotton and Orson Welles is in it. and an actress from the 1940s named Vali, who was supposed to be like the new Greta Garbo, but it never happened. But she's lovely in it. She's fine. But it is about a man in post-war Vienna who is a writer who's kind of down on his luck, but he has a friend who's in post-war Vienna who has offered him a job. But when he arrives, he finds out that his friend has been killed, like in a car accident, like hit by a car.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but the more he hears about the story about how his friend died, the more he feels that his friend died under suspicious circumstances. Because, like, the story doesn't add up. And the reason it doesn't add up is that there is a unknown third man who was at the accident.
Oh.
And no one seems to know who the third man is. And so he becomes obsessed with trying to find out who the third man is. But what's fun in the movie is that there is an extremely obviously gay couple in the movie.
Okay.
And like they're sort of seen together at the beginning because the movie starts with this funeral, right? Mm-hmm. And then they're seen individually, and then later they're seen together in what is clearly their pajamas at one of their apartments. Like later on. Like, they don't make any bones in the movie about it being a gay character. Gay couple.
And again, I go back to, how is it that audiences didn't have extreme reactions to this, considering the view of gay people at the time?
Well, it really is about like what audiences were
like, were they in denial that this was gay or no? Or did they recognize then that it was gay?
Well, it really was about like how sophisticated the audience was. Like, what do you already know? Like, think about when you watch, say, a Marvel movie, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you haven't read the comics, they'll introduce a character sort of in passing, and you'll just like, oh, it's just that character in passing, right? But if you've read the comics, you know who that character is, and all their backstory and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But you can still enjoy the movie, even if you don't know the backstory of whatever this minor character is.
Okay.
But if you're in the know, then the character's appearance there is more meaningful to you. So I was watching an old movie in the early 1930s, and one of the characters said, oh, if that happens, we're SOL. Obviously, we know. Shit out of luck.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, it's 34. Why, like, did audiences know that SOL meant shit out of luck? And it turns out that the expression SOL was like a popular catchphrase in World War I among soldiers.
Oh.
Oh, if that happens, we're SOL. If they find our position, we're SOL. And so it was common like phrasing for World War I veterans. So in the early 1930s, you could say SOL in a movie.
Right.
And obviously if children would not know that it meant shit out of luck, because it was the kind of thing only adults would say to each other. But for returning World War I veterans, which had been, 14, 15 years before, they would know exactly what that meant.
Gotcha.
So they would do this in movies all the time, where they would have like a wink at the audience, where the audience, if you were in the know, you would know. And they would do this with gay characters. But we talk about this in Call Me Savage, this Clara Bow movie, where they like go to a gay bar, but it's not really like a gay bar. It's much more like, like a drag brunch for straight people, right?
Right.
Where there are gay people who are there, but the audience is straight people. But they go to the gay club because they want to see the gay show. But it's not really like a gay bar for gay people where a straight character is there. But the thing is that if you don't know anything, you would have to know what gay people are in order to understand what this was. Mm-hmm. Which obviously audiences in the early 1930s, because Call Me Savage was in 32, had to know that there were bars where there were mincing gay characters and drag queens and whatever else that were there to perform for straight audiences.
Right. Okay. I was just curious.
So I think the audiences were more sophisticated than Hollywood wanted to let on.
Right. Makes sense.
But, they were trying to get around the Catholic decency.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we don't talk about those kinds of things.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
But it is fun to watch these movies again as a modern audience and sort of see these references.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the Third Man does have a great has one of the most famous lines in movie history that Orson Welles wrote.
Okay.
In the movie, it's sort of talking about sort of the like the dangerous criminal underworld that was in Vienna in the post-war era, and sort of like what a shambles the world was in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So his character says, in Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did they produce? The cuckoo clock.
Funny.
And sort of the point was, yes, there may be terrible times, but wonderful things can be produced out of,
It's true.
Especially art, I think, is produced out of sort of antagonism and danger and all those kinds of things. And so in some ways, the blossoming of these sort of coded gay characters in the era came from the oppression that they were in. And now we get to enjoy these movies on more than one level because of the difficult era that they were made in. That's my message.
That's a nice message.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe we should all take heed to it these days.
Yeah. Also, The Third Man is a really fun sort of thriller, trying to find out sort of who the third man is and what happened to the friend that was he murdered? Was it an accident?
Was it? I guess you have to watch to find out.
I guess you have to watch the movie to find out.
Okay.
All right. So, Romaine, of any of these movies, did anything entice you?
I mean, the one with the golden statue of all of them sounded the most interesting to me.
All right. Well, it is of the most famous classic movies, is probably the highest ranked and rated. Mm-hmm. So you might be onto something.
Okay. Look at me. Look at me onto something. It's amazing.
Yes. But we will have more movie talk and more movie suggestions and hear all about the new podcast and new book from Alonso Duralde coming up next here on Derek and Romaine.
Stay tuned for more Derek and Romaine.
Derek here along with Romaine, and joining us, our returning champion, Alonso Duralde, is back with us. He is a podcast host and author and film reviewer. His latest book is Hollywood Pride, a celebration of LGBTQ plus representation and perseverance in film. And, of course, you can also check out his newer podcast, The Film Library, a Kanopy podcast, and, of course, Linoleum Knife, Deck the Hallmark, and Breakfast All Day. He is constantly busy.
Is there anything he doesn't do?
Constantly working. Alonso, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. And I'm also on Maximum Film, just so to get a clean sweep here, you know.
Are you ever not putting out content?
Yeah, I feel like I should be sleeping with a headset on and just, recording things because, yeah, it's a lot. But, it is it's the state of the media right now. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, that is really true. Well, we wanted to have you on to talk about your new book and, of course, my latest obsession, which is Kanopy.
Oh, excellent.
Derek literally, he talks about Kanopy all the time. He is obsessed. That's not a joke.
No, it's it's become a running gag on Maximum Film. I bring it up even before I was doing their podcast. I was constantly sort of beating the drum for them. So yeah, I think it's a thing where you tell someone about it and they don't know and they dig into it. They're like, oh, MG, and it's free with my library card. I've got all this stuff. So yeah, it is it's a bit of a mind virus once it gets out there.
Yeah, I mean, I just well, first of all, there's a couple of things because everybody out there is like, oh, I'm feeling the pinch. I have so many subscriptions to X, Y, and Z, whatever. And Kanopy is free. It's a free service with your local library. All you have to do is get a library card, and you can find out if you have if your library is participating. But basically, a lot of libraries have had DVDs that people can rent,
And
just
still
like
do.
checking out books. And Kanopy allows libraries to be able to have a much broader library of films to make available to their subscribers. It's a wonderful service, and it has so many movies and TV shows. I can't even believe how much is in Kanopy.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you tell people about it, and they think, oh, if it's a library thing, it's going to all be, like documentaries about ancient Rome or something. And, those are there for sure. But like they have a lot of the recent A24 titles, they have a lot of sort of Hollywood classics. They do a whole big section of musicals, tons and tons of LGBTQ plus stuff, like things that you just aren't finding in most places. And then also all the complete a library of the documentaries of a filmmaker I really love named Frederick Wiseman, who's one of our greatest living doc filmmakers. All of his films are there. So yeah, it is whatever your niche thing of movies. If you're a horror fan, if you are looking for queer cinema or classics or recent stuff or all different kinds of TV shows, Kanopy is extraordinary.
So with your Kanopy podcast, The Film Library, tell everyone a bit about sort of the guests you have on and what the focus is.
Sure. So Daniel Thompson and I had done a podcast during lockdown called A Film and a Movie, where we would connect a classic film with a more recent film and sort of talk about, how filmmakers get inspired and the connective tissue of that kind of thing. And we interviewed a lot of critics and filmmakers both to talk about stuff. So we kind of went for that approach in doing this podcast as well. So, to talk about documentaries, for example, we brought in Alex Winter, who is, from the Bill and Ted movies, but has also become a really prolific and successful documentarian with films about everything from, Frank Zappa to YouTube. And so, he had a lot to say on that subject. We talked to Cheryl Dunier, the director of The Watermelon Woman, about the ongoing importance of LGBTQ plus cinema. We talked to Justin Simeon about Black cinema. We talked to Kristen Lopez, who wrote a book about adaptations called But Have You Read the Book? About, book to film adaptations, which they have a ton of on Kanopy. So, it was just a really cool opportunity to talk to people, and then just general film fans like Patton Oswalt, who is one of those like we were saying before, he's one of those people who won't shut up about Kanopy. So we knew he'd be great to sort of talk in general about like what's great about the service and why get on it. So we did our first episode with him. So it's a mix of critics. We have Justin Chang coming on, who just won the Pulitzer Prize to talk about film noir. And Francis Lee, who directed God's Own Country and Ammonite, talking about international cinema. So yeah, it was a really fun mix of folks to talk to.
And awesome. I also, you can listen to the podcast, but you can also watch the podcast on Kanopy
and on YouTube.
And on YouTube. And when you're watching the podcast, when you are discussing a film that is on Kanopy, it says you can watch this movie on Kanopy, which is actually really helpful because, you don't just discuss movies that are on Kanopy, but sometimes you do. And it is great, actually, if you're talking about a movie that sounds really interesting and it is available on Kanopy. It's like, okay, great, make a note.
I think there needs to be more pop-up video in general, Like, I don't know why, like, during the presidential debate, we didn't get the sort of pop-up, actually, this is a lie that Trump is telling right now. I think that would have really helped a lot.
Yeah.
Very much so, yes.
We do. Especially we have even better technology for pop-up video. I agree. Of all the things we should be bringing back, that should be top of the list.
100%.
The next debate should be on VH1.
Demographically, awesome. It is. Okay. As we discussed, Kanopy has an incredible library of LGBTQ titles, and in particular, quite a bit of the LGBTQ movies of the 80s and 90s that sort of ushered in the era of new queer cinema. And it is a great opportunity to actually revisit some of these movies if you saw them the first time around 30 years ago. But also, it just really gives you a glimpse of what issues were important to the LGBTQ community over the last 30, 40 years, because not every movie is sort of the tried and true coming out story.
Sure.
So it's wonderful that is available to see.
Yeah, I will say one of the more gratifying things I've been hearing about people reading my new book, Hollywood Pride, is that it's sort of sending them out to go find movies that they either have never seen or wanted to revisit. And so, Kanopy is definitely a good place to start for finding a lot of that stuff, particularly as you mentioned when you're getting into the dawn of the new queer cinema of the late 80s and early 90s.
Now, I was actually totally setting you up to talk about your book, which I have been tearing through. I think that I can't believe what a daunting challenge this must have been, even for somebody like you who has been deeply immersed in film for your entire life. Even still, there's quite a bit that is new and newly discovered and newly examined that you include in the book. But also, I mean, the acceleration of LGBTQ plus representation in the last 20, 25 years has been shocking.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I even say in the intro, look, after 1990, if I, have left out your favorite movie or filmmaker, like, sorry, there's just no way to try and, get all of that in there. But yeah, no, it's funny because, this was a book that was pitched to me. TCM has their publishing arm is with Running Press, who I've worked with before. And they had done a great book on, called Hollywood Black that Donald Bogle did, and then followed that with Viva Hollywood from Luis Reyes. And so these were kind of Hollywood histories through the lens of a very specific community and how those communities were represented on screen, and also how those communities, made we're making films, doing, whether they were acting or directing or producing or what have you. And so they came to me with the LGBTQ plus version. And, I did a pitch and they liked it, and I started and I thought, okay, yeah, I got this. I know this stuff. And constantly encountering, oh, didn't know that. Oh, never heard of her, and so it was very much a learning experience for me, kind of standing on the shoulders of great books that already exist, like William Mann's Behind the Screen and, Vito Russo's The Celluloid Closet, obviously, and Ruby Rich's New Queer Cinema. But yeah, it was a journey of discovery, let's say. And so I hope that readers, even if they walk into this thinking, I know this, maybe we'll come away with some new factoids as well.
I also, what I like about the book is that you also cover a lot of and I'll use the umbrella term queer here, people who work behind the scenes.
Yes.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
how they really influenced a lot of what we saw.
Yes, definitely. I think obviously we know that when we get to new queer cinema and the sort of current state of LGBTQ plus cinema, obviously there's a lot of queer artists making those films happen. But we've always been there, and we've always been behind the scenes. And even in more recent decades, I always say, like, we make the movies your dad loves. The guy who was the cinematographer for Rocky, it was a guy named James Crabe, who came out of a movement called the Gay Girls Writing Club, which was this, gay men in the industry and drag queens, and they would make kind of campy short films. They did one feature that was very, very underground. It would just kind of they would screen them at, in bars and at parties and stuff. And I think a couple of decades earlier, you could not have gone from being that sort of visibly gay in LA and Hollywood in the industry, and then, gone to work in the studios. And this guy starts out with these campy shorts and winds up shooting, again, Rocky and The Karate Kid. He gets an Oscar nomination for, I think, The Formula. sadly, we lose him in the 80s because, for AIDS-related complications, which obviously a whole generation of artists, that really took a hit on. But yeah, going back to the dawn of cinema, you've got filmmakers like F.W. Murnau who are shaping the cinema as we know it, with, films like Nosferatu and Sunrise. And, these are the kind of movies that, like, you can draw a direct line from, German Expressionism to Citizen Kane, and so it's not just that, it's cinema with an occasional sprinkling of LGBTQ plus people in the margins. Like, no. It's, you're welcome. This community helped create cinema as we know it.
I think, it's so funny. It's very hard to get young people to watch like a black and white movie because Romaine.
It's hard to get Romaine to watch a black and white movie.
Virtually impossible.
Yeah, it's still all this time later.
Yes, it will never change. I'm sorry, Alonso.
Oh, my lady.
I'm stubborn.
And I get that it's even hard to get people to watch silent movies, but
yes.
Sunrise is an incredible silent movie about a woman whose husband is having an affair and wants to marry another woman and has decided he's going to kill her.
Oh, how nice.
And she finds out about it and she basically has to spend her last remaining
heart. Huh? He has a change of heart,
Yeah, but she has to spend she has to find ways in their last remaining hours together to convince him that he's actually still in love with her and should be with her instead of murdering her. And it is and you think about silent movies of a lot of pantomiming and arm waving and, slapstick running from room to room kind of stuff. But especially the sort of the end of the silent era, it as an art form, it really was. They had really perfected it, and you get movies like Sunrise that are just absolutely incredible. Even though, it's a silent movie, and it's an incredible. The way that it's done is just really incredible.
Yeah, a lot of film scholars have said that if sound had come in a couple of years later, like that cinema would have gotten so much more visually sophisticated, because you look at Sunrise and they're doing these incredible effects involving people walking through, a city that suddenly turns into a field and then turns back into a city, that kind of thing. And just gorgeous and amazing things with the camera and with editing, which then kind of all got thrown out the window for a couple of years, because once the microphones come in, the camera gets locked down and everybody's having to sort of not move around too much because, they've got to, it's like that sequence in Singing in the Rain where they have to work with the microphone and it changes everything. In fact, actually, one of the things I learned about doing the book was that there's pretty much the only woman who directed movies in Hollywood's golden age in the studio system was a woman named Dorothy Arzner, who was a great filmmaker and a lesbian. And she kind of created the first boom mic because she was doing, this early talkie with Clara Bow, who had been a silent star. And Clara Bow was not one to sort of stay on her mark and deliver a line of dialogue. So Arzner comes up with this thing where they basically put a microphone on a fishing rod and follow Clara Bow around the set, so that wherever she was standing, there would be a mic above her.
And she had terrible mic fright because of her accent, because she was from Brooklyn. She had kind of a heavy Brooklyn accent that she was self-conscious about. So she was constantly trying to get away from the microphone or looking up at it, because she was just so self-conscious about it, which is crazy because she was, Clara Bow was such a huge star in the silent era that they would, when exhibitors were being told what movies were coming up, they were guaranteed 4 Clara Bow movies a year, and they were called Winter Bow, Spring Bow, Summer Bow, Fall Bow, and they didn't have a plot. They didn't have any other cast members. It was just that was it. You're getting one every 3 months.
Sold. Yeah, but I think generally the silent stars were terrified at the onslaught of talking pictures. You know?
I mean, and sometimes with good reason, but
Oh well, yeah.
yeah. But one of the biggest things that happened with, sort of the gay representation, though, was when they really cracked it down with the Hays Code
Yes.
in the early 1930s, because there had been some sort of gay characters, a little nudging out of the closet a little bit.
Yeah, there would be some very like fey supporting characters who were like there to make a joke about, is the costumer going to be, wearing the ladies, outfits on his off time, that kind of thing. But yeah, the Hays Code happens because you've got, the Catholic Church is threatening a boycott, and local censors are just literally taking the scissors to movies, in the projection booth because of their local community standards of whatever. And the studios are like borrowing a lot of money from Wall Street because they're all going into the exhibition business. So it's like, okay, we're gonna put this on lockdown and clean up our act, and that way nobody has to from the outside has to come in and tell us what to do. And so yeah, that there is, among other things, this erasure of queer characters, unless of course you're doing it very subtly and discreetly, and if you're hip enough to notice it, you will, but otherwise it sails over the heads of everybody. A thing I learned, though, is that moment didn't just affect the movies, but it also kind of affected the version of itself that Hollywood was selling to the world, So movie stars were suddenly told, hey, no more shacking up outside of marriage, or, if you're gay, like, you need to marry this woman. Like, it was all about kind of presenting this front of family coziness, to kind of dispel the old notion of Hollywood being this, Sodom by the sea with, cocaine orgies and, Fatty Arbuckle or whatever.
Well, and, it really, ultimately, Hollywood became a place where virtually everybody was in one closet or another. You had all the studios were run by Jews who were projecting this image of Christianity on film, of their idealized version of Christianity. You had all of these movie stars who had grown up poor, Joan Crawford sleeping under a staircase, and then being presented as these wealthy, glamorous, unattainable stars. And then you had gay people who are hiding their sexuality. So it was sort of like an entire town that just went into a closet that it did not emerge from until the studio system really started to break down, 25 years later.
And I think, I think so much of that is reflected now when people talk about, the whole MAGA thing. They are longing for, they are nostalgic for an America that never existed outside of the movies, And so the image of Hollywood on film was sanitized because of the code, and the image of Hollywood off screen was one giant, sort of shell game of hiding things. I mean, you even got Merle Oberon pretending not to be Asian, like there's so many, you're right, there's so many closets going on. And then you get to the 50s where, to be thought to be, if they think you're queer, they're also going to think you're a communist, So yeah, it is a version of society as presented by, like, the equivalent of the Soviet news agency, basically. The Kremlin's version of truth and reality is this version of America that people long for that never existed.
Right. But then, we do get some of the delight of some of these sort of more subversive messages that are slipped in. And, you look at a movie like Gilda, which is ostensibly a heterosexual love triangle with Rita Hayworth, never better, never looking better. Arguably, no one has ever looked better than Rita Hayworth looks in Gilda. But you watch that movie through today's eyes, and that is about two gay men, or at least a gay man or a bisexual man and another bisexual man, and Rita Hayworth is unwittingly in the middle of their, love contest. Oh, yeah.
And the actors knew it and played it that way, even though apparently that came as news to the director later.
How did the director not know?
Oh, you'd be amazed what straight white guys don't see, I think. That seems to be an ongoing motif. But yeah, Glenn Ford later was like, oh yeah, George McCready and I totally got it. And that's how we played it. And and they didn't necessarily discuss it with the director, and he later claimed not to have known that was what they were doing. But yeah, you look at that movie and that's absolutely happening.
Yeah. They're not jealous because one of them is with Gilda. They're jealous because they're not with the other one. Like, it is crazy. But you know what? You also get Rita Hayworth looking spectacular and quote unquote singing a couple of great songs. Like, whatever. There's a lot of entertainment in that movie.
Something for everyone in Gilda.
There really is. Now, in sort of continuing on with more recent stuff, was it difficult to look at more recent performers and people working behind the scenes and everything and judge, sort of try to judge their influence in a historical context in the same way that we are able to look back at some of the early pioneers and some of the early imagery that we got in a longer view.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, George Cukor has been dead for decades, and so it's easier to kind of look at his films from the perspective of time and distance and sort of see what he was about. Whereas, Dee Reese is still out there making movies, and so yeah, this is a history that goes all the way up to about, I'd say the last movie I write about in any detail would be, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And at some point it becomes less about history and more about reportage, and you're just sort of saying, well, this is happening now and this person is making movies and this film came out 2 years ago and seems to be important. But yeah, only time can tell, how much, I think The Mitchells versus the Machines represents a major turning point in that you have a principal queer character in a family friendly animated film. But we'll know more in 20, 30 years whether or not it sort of set off a new wave of things or was an outlier or whatever,
I guess we will have to see. Now, we are short on time, and I would be remiss if I did not ask you about Christmas.
Yes.
About Christmas? Oh, boy. Okay.
It's never too early to talk about Christmas.
Okay,
and,
sure.
As you know, what had previously been Hallmark's lock on the Christmas movie season has opened up all over the place, especially with the other streaming platforms and everything. But also now the sort of traditional Christmas movie has bled out into other holidays as well. So what is your take on the current state of holiday movies? And what should we be watching out for in the fourth quarter of 2024?
I'll tell you, I think that as far as kind of made for cable, made for streaming Christmas movie, we might have hit peak Christmas a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Because it ballooned to a crazy extent. There's a blogger who operates under the name Sleepy Kitty Paws on Tumblr, who was sort of charting the year-to-year number of these movies, and there was something like a 300% growth over a couple of years. It just got insane, and I think there's only so far you can, only so much audience you can get. Hallmark's still killing it. They're sort of the last great cable channel in a lot of ways, because I think most cable channels have kind of turned to dust at this point, but they're the ones who, especially in the fourth quarter, like you've got news, sports, and then Hallmark, and they're totally like still bringing the numbers because they've branded themselves so well in that regard. So yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing as much stuff from other places, but Netflix clearly seems to still have a stake in the game, so good for them, and they'll pop up in other places. And then as for the fourth quarter for this year, we've got two big theatrical releases happening in November, which I assume are coming out in November so that they can be ready to stream by December. One of them is another version of the book, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which stars Judy Greer. And then the other one is Red One, which is the Rock and Chris Evans and Santa is played by J.K. Simmons. And weirdly enough, if you've seen the Netflix movie A Family Affair with Zac Efron and Nicole Kidman, there's a running joke about a Christmas action movie that he's making about Santa being kidnapped, and everybody goes, "Oh, that sounds terrible." And it also sounds exactly like the plot of Red One. So we'll just have to see.
Okay. Well, Alonso, I appreciate you being with us.
Always a pleasure.
It's great to catch up with you. And you are still, like, whenever I'm, like, about to watch a movie, make a choice.
He always looks to see your review.
I
every
always
time.
check your review first.
Yep, you're his
Thank you.
reviewer. We trust your opinion.
I appreciate that vote of confidence, and one day we will sit Romaine down to watch All About Eve, and she'll enjoy it.
I've watched All About Eve.
Okay, see, it's a black and white movie. You made it. You did it.
I did watch that one, right, Derek? I feel like I did.
Yes, I think you did.
Yeah, I did watch that one. I've watched a few black and white movies. My
Okay.
favorite is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. That was my favorite of all of them.
That we made her watch.
Her
favorite is Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah,
One
Sunset
of
Boulevard's my
them.
favorite.
One of them is going to be a gateway drug. I believe in this.
I don't think so. But I have actually tried to watch some. I want you
Fair
to
enough.
know.
I
But
appreciate that.
it really is more Derek's thing than mine, obviously.
Yes. But I'm glad to always talk movies, past and present. So I appreciate your time and being with us again.
Absolutely.
Thanks, you guys.
You bet. Our thanks to Alonso Duralde for being with us. Pick up his brand new book, Hollywood Pride, a celebration of LGBTQ plus representation and perseverance in film. It is a great overview of 100 years of movies, and you'll get some great ideas of things to watch that you haven't ever seen before or things you could revisit. And of course, check out his many, many podcasts, The Film Library, a Kanopy podcast, also Linoleum Knife, Deck the Hallmark, and Breakfast All Day, and of course his reviews on the film Verdict. You're listening to Derek and Romaine. Well, there you have it. The end of another perfect episode of Derek and Romaine. And if you want more great fun, go to dnrstudios.com and subscribe to get our show every day. And don't forget, for DNR Plus subscribers, you can use the DNR Cast app for iPhone, available now in the App Store.